Could I have directors take their seats, please? All right, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Committee of the Whole meeting of Wednesday, November 8th, 2023. Could I have the room quiet, please? Mr. Robbins, before we get underway, I'd like to recognize that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Cowichan, Malahat, Subasat, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Layaxin, Paquachin, Dididat, and Pachidat Nation, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. Very important. I'd like to just remind everyone we have a very important day coming up this Saturday. I see directors wearing a poppy, and check your local communities for ceremonies going on locally. And with that, I turn to Mr. Robbins for next steps.
Good morning. With no changes, motion to approve the agenda as circulated for Committee of the Whole.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Mr. Robbins, next.
A motion to adopt the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of October 11th, 2023.
Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Mr. Robbins?
There is no business arising from those minutes, so that we move on to public input period. The public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the committee considers the item. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes, where the speaker is welcome to comment on any item or items on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that may, are, or have been subject to a public hearing. The speaker should comment in a polite, calm, and courteous manner using respectful language, civility, and decorum. We have no one online, and so we invite anybody in the public gallery to participate in public input period.
Anyone like to provide input on today's agendas? Please come forward to the lectern, press the button, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and directors. I'm Dave Monday. I'm with the Shawnigan Basin Society. I've spoken to you on other occasions. I did want to draw your attention to R9. There is a letter in the appendices that you'll be looking at today. It's a letter from our organization, Shawnigan Basin Society, and it was a letter to Mr. Clayton Postings and Jeff Moore, Keith, in the environmental department. So it outlines some of the things that are important to the Basin Society, and I won't go into the detail of it, it's in the letter, but what we are really involved with is, and you were talking about it in your previous meeting, we're involved with natural assets. So we are a volunteer group. We are looking encouragingly towards working with the CVRD as a strategic partner in the future, and we want to use our considerable expertise in the Basin Society to move the checkers forward on the board when it comes to natural asset protection, and that includes our lake, the streams, the watershed, all of which support our society. So I just wanted to thank you for your time and your efforts in moving the checkers forward on the board, and just hopefully we can help you with that at some point.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm Cliff Evans from Shawnigan Lake, the director of the Shawnigan Basin Society. And with this recent drought, we've had, the fish have really been under a lot of stress, the same as with the Cowichan watershed. And we monitor the area and really get down on the ground and see what's going on. And there is a lot of things that are detrimental out there that we have to get at. We see poachers fishing, spawning salmon in the streams. We see new construction letting off dirty water. And we've noted all this. We have pictures and stuff like that. But we need to get going. And R9 is very important to all the watershed, to all the fish, to all the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Like to encourage or welcome anyone else that would like to come forward to provide input to the committee on today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have something on the agenda specifically, but would like to speak to the land acknowledgement and to recognize that today, Wednesday, November 8th, is Aboriginal Veterans Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kaufman. Looking to the gallery, we have no one online. Anyone else? Going. Mr. Robbins, next item.
We're going to move on to Section 8, reports. R1 is a report from Emergency Management Cowichan with regards to the CEPF Emergency Operations Center Grant 2024. There's a recommendation before committee for the board's consideration later today.
Who on staff is going to be
Mr.
talking to
Postings.
this? Mr. Postings, welcome.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. What you have before you is this is part of the group of UBCM grants, and this is the final one for this year. You've seen 3 other of the grants come before you. This one, it relates to a focus of increasing capacity relating to the REOC or the EOC. And the grant does talk about the training relating to supplying some support for all the local governments within the region there to increase awareness of what the REOC, how it functions, and make sure that we're ready for those future activities there if and when they arrive. So I don't have a lot more on this one, but I just wanted to, I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Postings? I have a quick one. So this is personnel related for additional training and the likes, and we've discussed this many times before when we've got grants and we bring in the personnel and the grant funding ceases, and we find that we really like the additional services provided by the people that we brought on board. Is this got a sunset that we're firm and sticking to, and that we won't be facing supplemental requests for funding at the end of the program?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it has been addressed that way. So what the intent here is to get as a kickstart. We really need those additional resources and capacity, get a bit of a kickstart. So once we get up and going with the training plans and programs, the existing emergency management team would then continue the program after that. So this is a set period and would expire at the end of that. And at this point in time, there's no intent to carry that on after that.
Great, thank you. Moved and seconded. Mr. Robbins, the resolution.
That it be recommended to the board on November 8th, 2023, that a grant application in the amount of up to $150,000 be submitted to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for emergency operation centers, equipment, and training.
It's on the floor. No further questions. All in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries, and that goes to this afternoon's board meeting. R2, Mr. Robbins.
Is a report from Community Services Department with regards to Sport Tourism Event Grant Subcommittee. There is a recommendation to the board for the allocation of $17,000 in sport tourism event grants. And Mr. Elzinga is here to speak to or answer questions you might have on a report.
Welcome, Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and don't have a lot to say either. This report comes in front of you twice annually. These are the recommendations of your subcommittee from members around the region. 4 of the 5 members were in attendance and made these recommendations. Director Istash is one of the members and could probably speak to some of this as well.
Moved, Director Stone, moved and seconded. Discussion.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Elzinga. First, I just want to let the board know how good of a job, how easy staff make it. They prepare a really good interactive spreadsheet, lay out everything, and they have a really clear criteria process. I know it's a simple thing that we could just pass through, but I just really want to acknowledge the staff and the work they put into it. There's a lot of extensive applications, and there's a lot of work there. It may be a quick, half-hour meeting that subcommittee does, but the work they do in there is great. What I was really happy about with this year was it's an extremely diverse applications that came in, not only in sports, but genders, cultural backgrounds, and as well as age. A lot of senior activities and yet a lot of youth activities. And then just to finalize on here, I'm going to put my personal happiness in seeing one of the things in there. Everybody probably sees in there's Belgian Waffle Ride and wonders what the heck that is. Last year, that was its first time ever coming. It's a cycling event. What's really unique about this event in the regional district is it's a 212-kilometer race. It encompasses almost every area of the regional district. Out past Scotts Falls, across Kinsale Trestle, it covers 3 mountains within North Cowichan. And it's an international race. It came up from California. Last year was its first time ever here. The low numbers was $500,000 of direct economic impact here. This grant is positive because it shows them coming back and hosting its second time ever in Canada and returning here because it was so successful. It was 900 international racers, which included a contingent of Canadians suffering and locals such as myself that races and suffered and survived, but their projections for next year is 1,500 racers. The success in the U.S., to give you an idea, though, is it's 3,000 racers. So this is going to have a lasting legacy in the area, and just thanks for the extra opportunity to take a little extra time here. But most importantly, on everything I just said, thank you again to Mr. Elzinga and his team that they put together, because they make it really, really easy to come to these decisions.
Thank you, Director Douglas.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if we could pull item 6. I'd like to declare a conflict on that as I have a child who's a member of that club, and I understand we'll be in that competition that we're running the grant for.
I think we can pull number 6, can't we? Then I think it would,
I think the motion was, or is there a motion on the floor? There is no motion.
there's no motion on the floor,
Sorry,
so we'll,
Can we just
We'd have an amendment to sever item number 6 then, please?
okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed, motion carries. So we can continue with general discussion, leave when we come to the vote. Director Deck.
I'm really glad that Director Estache mentioned the diversity of gender representation there, and I'm just wondering if there's a girls' hockey team. I see girls, a number of other girls' activities, but I wonder if there's a girls' hockey team.
I think I'd go to staff on that. Go ahead, Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Chair. Through to Director Deck. There are certainly girls' hockey teams in the region. These were the applications that were submitted, so we did not receive an application from a girls' hockey team.
Thank you.
So we have resolution. I think we can give Director Douglas the opportunity to exit. You've already declared. Oh, yeah, right. We'll vote on that one. So you can stay for this. So all of the items 1 through 12 except 6, correct? All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Give Director Douglas a moment to exit the room for the stated reasons. So we need that moved, right?
And then a motion, Mr. Chair, number 6.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Oh, come on, let's talk for a little bit. Director McGonigal.
Just to prolong the pain, I wish Director Douglas's sibling, some child, or whoever is participating, that he did perceive a conflict, which I don't believe there is one, but in the premise of transparency, he did leave the room, and I thank him for doing that. Have I wasted enough
I
time?
think that's just perfect. Well done. Noted, and we'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Elzinga, could you track down Director Douglas? Mr. Robbins.
Moving to R3 is a report from the Arts and Culture Division with regards to a 2023 budget amendment for Function 426. That's Performing Arts Center, a platform lift replacement. There is a recommendation before committee for the board today. And Mr. Elzinga is there if he'd
Director Stone.
answer any questions.
I was just going to move the recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the item? It's pretty self-explanatory. Yes, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Elzinga.
That moves you to R4, which is a report from the General Manager, Land Use Services Department with regards to regional growth management. And Ms. Chair Wolf is
Mr.
on.
Wolf, do you have an introduction of this item? I don't see her. Where is she?
She appears online.
Yes?
If I might, we had a conversation around some strategic planning work that led to this resolution coming forward. I'm not sure there needs to be further discussion on it. I'd like to just move the resolution if I can.
That's in order
I'll
at any
second it.
time. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Oh, I think I should have you read the resolution, Mr. Robbins.
That it be recommended to the board on November 8, 2023, that one, that staff organize a workshop for the CVRD board on the topic of regional planning and growth management, including a presentation by the province of BC on regional growth strategies. 2, that municipal councillors be invited to participate. And 3, that any costs incurred be expensed to Function 100, General Government.
So it's been duly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Mr. Robbins, next item.
Moves you to R5. It's a report from the Recycling and Waste Management Division with regards to CVRD bylaw number 4526, solid waste fees and regulations amendment bylaw 2023. There is a recommendation before committee.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just have a quick introduction to the report. Now you're good. On an annual basis, and as part of the budget preparations, the staff review the costs involved in hauling and processing the materials received at the CVRD recycling centers. Material fee changes identified for 2024 are recommended to keep the Function 520 requisition increases at 3.5% and to balance the budget. Tipping fee changes in 2024 are recommended for garbage, roofing, couches, and mattresses, as well as organics, including commercial yard waste. And staff have also edited the definitions in the bylaw for clarity and have added items to the list of prohibited materials.
Thank you. Turn to the committee. Director Martman.
Thank you. I only have one, and thanks for the information. It's always interesting to review what we're asking people to pay. And I just wanted to bring up the use of a weigh scale at the facility for not waste disposal related issues. So I'm gathering this is like, you have a truck and trailer. I have a truck and trailer, and I'm using this kind of service because I want to know what the weight is. And it's a farming activity that I'm trying to take care of. So before I go driving down the road and pull into the weigh scales and find out that I'm going to cause problems. So this is going up, but I know other regional districts don't even charge for this. So I'm curious about, because I get it for free in Nanaimo. And so I'm curious about, what's the use around this? What do you see being used for? Is it local people trying to, stay within weights, or, is it moving products? So can you speak a little bit to it?
Through the chair, it's my understanding that a lot of local businesses, such as moving companies, will use this service. So they'll have a tare on their equipment, load the material up for a moving, and then be able to identify how much they're going to charge their own customers. So that's an example that I've been given. Sorry, and the second part of the question?
I guess it's, is there, I'm trying to imagine like the use of, I think this is helping businesses if we keep these costs low or zeroed, because if the use is to just come through, get a weight, and then be able to leave, is it adding costs to the facility, or, because they're fixed costs, aren't they, or adding something else?
Through the chair, there is potential that if
Can you hold on for just a second, because we're having a lot of fun with echoes. Okay, let's try that. Nope.
Was it you, Ben?
I have no idea why. No, it's on here. Okay. No. Now it's off. It's off.
And how does that sound? Much better.
No, but now it's coming in. I'm just gonna log out, log back in. But it's already disconnected. Oh.
Now, do you remember the question?
I do remember the question. There's potential that if it was a free service, you could have people taking advantage of that. So by limiting the number of, the amount of traffic that's coming through for that service, it just limits it to required purposes only.
Director Martman.
I guess I would put a plug in for our local businesses and our farmers, in that, to me, this is one of those things, if it's not going to cost us a particular amount of money because we're not dealing with a garbage or anything that's being tipped, that we are actually, providing a service that is going to help our local businesses. And so I guess I would just say, let's keep it the way it is. Let's not increase this amount if that's possible. And can I make a motion to that effect?
I think we would have to have some specifics around what the resolution would say. Unless everybody clearly understands exactly what he's getting at. Director Stone.
I think the challenge would be then we'd have to reflect on how solid waste maintains 520 with the direction given to the budget, because these fees are being brought forward to keep the requisition at 3.5% is what I understand. So that would have financial implications that would need to be calculated, and the board would need to be prepared to allow a more substantive requisition increase.
I'm hoping you're working on crafting
Chair,
a
I'm
potential.
sorry, I don't know if you can hear me,
resolution.
but I can't hear any of you.
Okay, apparently we're having technical issues. I've got Director Douglas, then Martin, I think, Martman,
I just did it.
and
Should be fine now.
are we
I
fine
can
now?
hear you now.
Do our online folks, can you hear us? Can we
Yes.
keep conversations down, please? Michelle, Director Stables?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, good, thank you. So we just heard from Director Stone, appreciate the comment. I have additional comments along those lines as well. I'll go to Director Douglas, then back to Director Martman.
Just for clarity, so were we talking about increasing or not increasing the tipping fee for use of the weigh scale at the facility from $7 to $10? So we're talking about that $3 difference. But are you suggesting we maintain, through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Martman, you're suggesting we maintain the $7, not reduce it to not to zero?
I'd like to go to zero, but, sorry, I don't know if I should, I have a question for staff.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Director Deck first.
Actually, Mr. Chair, can I just get clarity on one item though? Like, if it's $7 per event, how often does this happen in a year? Like, how much money are we
That's a perfect
talking about?
question to be asking staff.
Through the chair, I would have to get back to you on that number. I don't have that number.
But do we have a rough idea? Like, if it's like a once a month thing or a once a day?
Not very frequent. It's not very frequent.
So likely not a significant amount of money, whether we go with $7 or $10.
Correct.
All right.
Director Deck.
Thanks. I'd like a little clarification about illegal dumping. And it says, one of the best ways to deter illegal dumping is to keep areas clean. The CBRD supports individuals, nonprofits, and et cetera, by waiving up to $1,000 in tipping fees for waste disposal. So I'm assuming that's on public lands.
Yes.
Thank you.
Director Acton.
Well, I was wondering about the difference for South Cowichan, where we don't have garbage service already. So how would this affect us? Because I think everybody else at the table is sitting here with a different lens. So wondering how this might affect South Cowichan differently.
Which staff wants to take that one?
Through the chair, are you referring to fees at alternate tipping locations?
Could it encourage more illegal dumping?
Oh.
Could it, since we don't have any kind of service, we don't, we may not employ, or we may have more garbage, or more private business operating, like, just wondering if there's a difference.
Through the chair, the changes to the tipping fees at the facilities, I can't see how it would impact, make a change to residents in another area. If they're not using the service now, then it won't affect them. And if they are using the service, then it may affect them, but then it would be the same as how the rest of the region is being affected.
So does it affect, for example, Fisher Road in some way? Do they use the service as a, or our private
Perhaps an
collectors,
explanation
or-
as to how the fees are paid at Fisher Road in relation to the CVRD operated sites. I think that's where we're going here.
Through the chair, for my knowledge, there haven't been any garbage tipping fee changes at Fisher Road. I'm not aware of the changes of what they're implementing for 2024 at this time.
Okay, so we kind of got two topics in there, and just going back to where Director Martman was going, and you know, I can appreciate the taking that that one piece out, and I'm just reminded of a conversation that we had with another department with, in regards to providing a service. I think it's someone in land use services. We have a lot of inquiries from the realtor industry, and they're making, you know, use of the service, and it was essentially part of the work stream, part of that staff had to do, and there was a suggestion that fee be increased as a service that's provided. I don't think we're supposed to be in subsidy of business, and whether that be business or farmers. And this is what what's been recommended by staff as far as presentation of fees for the budget purposes for the year ahead. So I turn to committee if there's a resolution to amend the staff recommendation. I would entertain that now. If not, I would hear what Director McClinton has to say.
Just want to, through the chair, just want to commend the staff on working to our 3.5% budget. I know it's a challenge in facing austerity. That's the wrong word, but we're all trying to tighten our belt buckles. So just appreciate that, and I would support the motion to move it. The recommendation.
Director Douglas,
I'll second the motion.
did we have a motion to? Moved and seconded.
Okay, I thought Director McClinton just moved it.
Okay, okay, fantastic. So it's been moved and seconded. Your voice kind of tailed off there at the end a little bit. Any further discussion? And that's as presented. I guess we should probably have it read.
That it be recommended to the board on November 8, 2023, that CVRD bylaw number 4526, solid waste fees and regulations amendment bylaw 2023 be considered for 3 readings and adoption.
Any further discussion? Director Martman?
So can I make an amendment then to,
You can make
yes,
an
I thought I might be able
amendment
to.
motion at any time.
So I would like to hearing from staff that this is not a big ask to keep this the same in terms of finances. It's a rare event, or, you know, doesn't happen often. I would move the amendment that the use of the waste scale at the facility stay at the current tipping fee of $7.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the resolution? Everybody's clear and understands it? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's defeated. Back to the main motion. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. And is that going through to the board tonight? Yes, or this afternoon?
That's the intention, Mr. Chair.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Robbins, next item.
Item R6, report from Economic Development Division with respects to the MRDT options for affordable housing. There is a 2-part recommendation from committee to the board today. Mr. Reardon is here to speak to the report and answer your questions.
Mr. Reardon, I'm anxiously looking forward to this.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. So as you can see, the purpose of this report is to seek direction from committee on the potential use of municipal and regional district tax online accommodation platform revenue, or OAP revenue, towards affordable housing. So current OAP revenue, affordable or online accommodation platform revenue, is directed towards tourism marketing services in the CVRD, but an option exists to redirect this revenue towards affordable housing. So the CVRD may choose to direct this revenue towards affordable housing once a year at the November 30th annual work plan and financials process. So staff is in front of you seeking your support and see if the desire to move forward with this in 2023 or defer to 2024. This item was first brought before committee in 2021, and following discussion it was decided that further engagement on this topic would be beneficial. For reference, at that time, the online accommodation platform revenue was 50,000 annually, and since then, in 2022, it grew to 170,000 in the region, so significant growth, and further growth is expected in 2023. And just for some context, housing, as you know, is intrinsically tied to the economic health and vitality of a community. And although there has been substantial economic growth in BC, communities have struggled to generate, attract, and retain skilled and stable workforce. In the 2022 workforce housing survey that CBRD undertook, employer respondents identified housing issues as a major barrier to employment, attraction, and retention, morale, and wage expectations. And this is reflected here in increasing job vacancies on Vancouver Island, with the highest rates experienced in sectors associated with the tourism industry. In 2023, Tourism Cowichan representatives were consulted to understand their position on this potential change. While they indicated support for initiatives to address workforce housing issues, representatives were generally opposed to reducing the share of MRDT funding, citing, among other things, increasing costs to do business. On the other hand, staff note that Tourism Cowichan experienced significant surpluses in recent years, resulting in Tourism Cowichan having a total surplus of 778,000 as of the end of December 2022. So this surplus is in addition to growing revenues in both the general MRDT tax, which is hotel tax, and the online accommodation platform revenue. So the general MRDT tax grew by 155,000 since 2019 to 2022, and then the online accommodation platform revenue grew by 122,000 in the same period. In terms of broader stakeholder engagement, in 2022, staff undertook a series of workforce housing surveys, which included questions around MRDT and short-term rentals. The results were that 71% of employers and 80% of employees indicated clear preference for redirecting online accommodation platform revenue towards affordable housing initiatives as opposed to tourism marketing. So the decision before committee is whether to direct OAP revenues towards tourism marketing or affordable housing within the region. And if changes are approved by the board, staff will prepare a affordable housing MRDT plan outlining the use of funds for committee and board approval. And if the CBRD chooses not to pursue OAP revenues towards affordable housing in 2024, the next opportunity to do so will be in the next intake in November 2024 for the 2025 year. And that is it for an introduction. I welcome any questions and discussion. Thank you.
I have Director Istash, Douglas, McClinton, Deck, and Abbott. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Mr. Reardon. I've got two concerns with using this. I'll touch on both of them really quick. The first off, and also I think I might ask Director McGonigal for some information from Lake Cowichan, but this is a revenue source that definitely supports an economy where we're looking for diversification from our resource industry. And this is a wise investment for that economic stability into non-resource based activities that are growing in the region. But most notably, where I look at this is in that report also showed to it, and to supplement to our North Cowichan Grant and Aid meeting last night, our visitor centers are struggling with capacity and funding. This is a predictable funding model that I think where we should actually be talking about is directing this funds to more money going towards our visitor centers. For example, the Chemainus Visitor Center came to North Cowichan for grant and aid yesterday, where they're asking for taxpayer money to expand their services. They're struggling to pay employees because of rising rates and to have the hours with the large increase in tourism we're seeing in the area. And then that had me also think of the, in the news, I believe, last year, and that's why I referenced Director McGonigal, was I think the Lake Cowichan Visitor Center had funding issues, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to recall that, as well as all the other visitor centers in the areas where they're asking for taxpayers' funds. This is something that the visitors themselves are paying for the services. And I'd like to note that visitor centers aren't just about tourists. They also serve our residents. It serves our newcomers to the area. Typically, when someone comes to the area, and it's actually what I did when I moved here, was looked at a visitor center, and that was my way to learn about the area and how I decided to move here. It was my source. So we give money to chambers of commerces, but then they're pulling their money for their roles they fid to help operate their visitor centers. So we're continually using taxpayer funds, regional district funds to offset that when the MRT-DT could be better allocated that. So I just wanted to share that. That's why I have concern, and I don't really know where this big pot of affordable housing money is going when we have initiatives in North Cowichan, I know other municipalities do, and then the huge amount of money with the Housing Accelerator Fund that's going towards affordable housing projects once we hear what the feds are going to use on that. And last, quick, pulling this money, we say here that it'll only be 6% of the revenues, but we actually don't know what the revenues are going to be, because if we all recall, we have the new short-term rental legislation coming before us. I think this is going to have a significant impact on the amount of Airbnbs in the area. So we need to be mindful that we're saying we think this money's here, but it actually might disappear because there's a lot of illegal Airbnbs out there that might choose not to do it, as well as the commercial enterprises taking away our housing. So I think the SRT regulations are going to achieve some of the goals that we think we might do by pulling this money. And then also to that, so if you could speak real quick on just those two topics, really quick, on how you see where visitor centers are in the area, and if this money might be best suited to that, and then where, if we do take this, and knowing what's coming with the SRT, what would your intentions of this funds, where is it actually going?
Mr. Reardon.
Through the chair, nice easy one to start off with. So visitor centers, right now in the 5-year tactical plan for Tourism Cowichan, they have identified providing 50,000 to support visitor center revenue in the region. The revenue that I was mentioning in terms of, we have general MRDT revenue, which is hotel tax, and then we have the online accommodation platform revenue. Both have seen significant growth. When we looked at the 2019 levels of total revenue, so that's general revenue plus the online accommodation platform revenue, compared 2019 to 2022, the general revenue just by itself is higher than that number, the two numbers combined, by 100,000 compared to those years. So there is revenue growth for Tourism Cowichan, regardless of what happens with online accommodation platform revenue. To my mind, the fundamental question is, are you putting money in that is derived from a loss of housing towards marketing additional tourism, or do you direct it towards supporting housing? To me, that's the fundamental question here. So I think there's opportunity within the tax to direct appropriate amount to tourism visitor centers, which is underway. So leave that there. And then on the online accommodation platform revenue and the new regulations coming from the province, it's true that may change the shape of how things look with the overall market. So the 170,000 may, right now I think already by June or July of this year, we're already at 170,000. So we're still seeing continued exponential growth of this revenue. My My feeling is that with those regulations, with the province and whatever we do, we may slow down that growth. But I'm yet to be convinced that that number will drop easily. And directing that towards affordable housing, I think goes back to that fundamental question of what we want to do. Do we want to direct a revenue from a loss of housing towards housing or towards growing tourism? Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. O'Riordan. I'm just looking at the fact we're on R6. We have 4 or 5 more anyways and a closed session. So I'd like everyone to, I'm going to use that succinct word again, and go to Director Douglas.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Mr. O'Riordan, and then a couple comments. In the report, you note that the surplus of the tourism couch society was almost $800,000 at the end of December 2022. Do you have a sense of whether or not that surplus is going to be larger at the end of this calendar year?
I'm aware that Tourism Couch is working to try to reduce that surplus.
All right.
That's succinct.
And your comments?
Yeah, my comment is, yeah, I agree with the analysis in the report and in your comments, Mr. O'Riordan. As you point out with regards to the surplus, the Tourism Couch and Society obviously is doing some great work in terms of marketing that sector, but hasn't been able to spend the full funding allocation, and it does have that almost $800,000 surplus there that I think could be used for some, part of it at least, for some other purposes. As everyone around here is where we are facing a housing crisis, and I think what we've learned, and I know Director Stone, you've seen this in Ladysmith, and you know, Mayor Staples and Duncan, the BC Housing funding programs, they can do a lot, but typically they don't fully meet the need in terms of our housing crisis here in the community, and you know, many of these projects we are looking for other funding sources. So there's some way we could allocate a portion of this to local affordable housing projects. I think would be a great thing for the entire region. And as you pointed out, Mr. O'Riordan, we're not talking about taking away the MRDT revenue. It's only the general revenue would continue to go to Tourism Couchin, but as you've explained, we would just be looking at the online accommodation platform portion of that, which is the much smaller share of the overall funding amount. So happy to support the recommendation. Just to build on Director Eustach's comments, as Director Eustache mentioned, we did discuss yesterday evening at our council meeting some of the challenges with the visitor center in Chemainus, and they are looking at an increase in the grant that they receive. And I'm not sure this is the appropriate time for it, but I would be interested in adding to the recommendation, perhaps even just an additional bullet saying, you know, directing staff to work with Tourism Couch and Society to explore options for increasing the annual grant at the Chemainus Visitor Center. And just to be clear, when Director Eustache and I are talking about this, we're not talking about a dramatic increase to the annual grant. Even you know, a couple or a few $1,000s would make a pretty big difference for that facility. So I don't know if this is the appropriate time for it, Mr. Chair, but I'd be happy to move the recommendation and include on it that additional point that I've just raised.
A resolution could be made at any time. We have great interest in this item for discussion, and I'd really be reluctant to cut that off at this point. So I'm just hearing from Mr. Robbins that a separate resolution would be appropriate in addition to the resolution that we have here, and I tend to concur. So with that, I'd ask you to hold, and we'll go to the speakers list, which has grown since the last time. So I'm going to repeat my plea for succinctness, and don't try not to repeat comments made already. Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a few comments. I was really excited to see this on the agenda, and I think just such a great innovative idea to tackle some of the challenges we're facing. Again, probably a drop in the bucket for what we really need to do in terms of housing, but this is an absolute full-out emergency for Canadians. We're last in G7 per capita housing. We're running a massive deficit every year in housing. And you know, I mention this every time. This is something that we have all the tools right now today to do something about. And so I'm just really excited for these innovative ideas. As somebody that lives and breathes the free market, you know, other ideas that I'm hoping to see forward is non-market housing to combat some of those price differences. And, you know, I'm just really in favor of these sorts of innovative ideas coming forward, and that, you know, it seems to me that you're picking up what the board has been saying over the last little bit. For me, this is about dignity and about, you know, the more people that have a place to hang their hat, that's a big win, and that makes a difference in somebody's life every single day. This is the issue in my mind for millennials and for people that think they're never going to own a home. So I'm fully in support of the motion, and I will leave it at that. Thank you. Sorry, I did have a question. My one question: where is this? How is this money going to be spent? Who's going to be administering the dollars?
Mr. O'Riordan.
Thanks for the question. As outlined in the report, that the funding can only be used for certain things based on the MRDT criteria. So should the committee and board approve this resolution, then we would go back with Tourism Cowichan to work on the budget to align with this, and then we would also come back to committee with direction on how we'd use these funds. In the workforce housing strategy right now, we had a quick call with Destination BC, and they said that 3 of the 4 items that are on main strategic items on the workforce housing strategy are eligible for funding within this program. So that's an early indication in terms of direction that we may go with this.
Thank you, Mr. O'Riordan. Director Deck?
I'm just wondering if the accommodation would be short-term, sort of the high season for tourism, or would it be sort of the year-round housing that longer-term work would provide for?
Would you mind clarifying the question?
Okay,
Sorry.
so is the link to the housing with this online accommodation money, is that to provide housing for workers in tourist season, or is it for just general folks who are moving here?
It's more broadly. We have noted from our engagements in the workforce housing strategy that the time when these accommodations are most used, the online accommodation platform revenue is being used, is also the time when we have got the greatest demand for seasonal workforce in farming, for example, and in the tourism sector. So there's a connection there. We're not talking about regulation in this discussion, but that would be maybe more relevant for the regulation discussions. But in terms of general approach, it's I think the provincial government did some analysis, and they said that for every 100 units that are put on the market for short-term vacation rentals, it equates to approximately $50 in increased rental rates in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So
it is basically for seasonal work, these houses then, yes? No? Sorry,
I think it's the use of short-term vacation rentals could be seasonal or it could be year-round.
Okay.
So in some circumstances, they are taking away housing for long-term housing
Okay.
within the region.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Director Abbott?
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to add time, but I would like to overemphasize and agree with the directors Stash, Douglas, and McClinton, and stress that perhaps this would motivate Tourism Cowichan to expend their surplus. I don't understand how close to $800,000 has been accumulated without being spent on tourism activities, including advocating for more hotel space. This community needs it. And I have a slight conflict of interest, as I have a partner that works for one of the visitor centers. A question, $50,000, is that for all of the visitor centers? That's woefully low in my estimation.
Okay, we're not gonna go to the visitor center funding discussion right now. We probably need a day-long session to get into that one. Director Staples.
I took my hand down because I want to speak to the motion that's next.
Okay, you're passing. Director Stone.
Yeah, so just some observations. If we do have some success in returning online accommodation rentals back to the long-term market, those revenues go down. It's achieving the desired outcomes anyway. This has been talked about for it feels like a couple years. Definitely started in last term about how we're going to redirect some of these. I think it's a really important. It's a well thought out. It needs to be done. The visitor center in the north end gets no regional funding. It's funded from the municipality without tax dollars through business licensing. So there's lots of creative ways to fund visitor centers, but obviously that's not the discussion we're having right now. So hopefully we can have that discussion separately in a more appropriate time and venue. Thanks.
Director Nicholson. So I'd entertain a motion as recommended in the staff report. Moved by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Stone. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Turn to Director Douglas. Do you have additional resolution?
Yeah, the wording I've jotted down here was that, as I mentioned earlier, staff work with the Tourism Cowichan Society to explore options for increasing the annual grant to the Chemainus Visitor Center. But Mr. Chair, if you feel this is kind of straying too far from the subject that you'd like it brought forward at a future meeting, I can certainly.
Well, I think we've addressed the principal objective and intent of the report. This is a separate resolution, and I think that we would have to have staff come back and report to us as to the feasibility and the hows and the wherefores. So I would, hang on, I'll entertain your motion and see if we have a seconder. We have a seconder. Director Istash is first, and then I'll go to Director Stone.
Thank you, Chair. Just maybe an amendment, actually, I would rather look at the whole region and include Ladysmith, so it's all the visitor centers, just to look at that, because I don't think Mr. Reardon wouldn't have put it in his report as he outlined it in there and made it stand out that visitor centers are drastically underfunded. He highlighted that in the report, so it just was a subsequent thing on this, and I appreciate Director Douglas's motion, but I would just make an amendment that they look at the funding model within the regional district of all visitor centers to make it equitable and fair for the whole region.
Okay, so we've now had a motion to amend the resolution. Do you have a seconder? We have a seconder. Any discussion on the amended resolution? Director Toporowski. No, I know she wants to speak, but we've got an amendment on the floor right now, so I want to deal with the amendment. Okay. Director Staples, do you have a comment on the amendment that we're considering right now, or did you want to speak to the main motion?
I have a comment on the amendment.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So what I believe that this should be at a budget discussion, not here. So if we just defer this to staff to have it part of the budget discussion, I think that would be more appropriate than what sort of the direction that we're going in. So I'd prefer that the motion actually just be either defeated or withdrawn, and that we move to direct staff to defer this to budget discussions. We did discuss this when we were doing strategic planning, so it has come up already, and that is where we had talked about having this discussion. So that's what I'd like to put forward.
So we have an amending resolution to the main resolution, and now a referral resolution, which takes precedence. So I would ask if there's a seconder to the referral motion. There's a seconder. Unless there's points to be made on the propriety of referral.
Could I make a comment just in terms of timing?
Please proceed.
So the reason we brought this to you now is that the November 30th deadline is fast approaching in order to submit the tactical plan. Now we've talked with Destination BC, and they've said that we can extend some time in order to submit an application a little bit later in order to consult with the municipalities and gain their support for this also. So I just want to put that there, that we don't want to, maybe don't want to complicate things too much in terms of, took us 2 years to get to this point. It might be worthwhile to have this for consideration at for the next year's budget as
Okay,
opposed to this
so,
year's.
so just, I need some clarity here. I think I followed the bouncing ball on this one. We've already passed the resolution. Yes, so that's done. This is a separate resolution to investigate visitor center funding. Right, so it's separate entirely. We've had a motion to amend that to all visitor centers, and we now have a duly moved and seconded referral motion, which takes precedence. So I only want to hear discussion on the propriety of referral. I'll go to Director Wilson. You haven't spoken on this, so on the propriety of referral.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will keep this brief. I am amazed at how such a simple thing as affordable housing can be deflected and changed into something which has gone so complicated that I have no idea what we're talking about.
We're not talking
This
about
is
affordable.
quite straight. Thank you very much.
On the propriety of referral, Director Istesh.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing that, Mr. Reardon. If we do not include the looking at the visitor center funding, that portion is part of the strategic planning that needs to be submitted now. So if we don't direct Tourism Cowichan to look at their funding model for visitor centers for next year before the November deadline, if we wait to budget or we wait to January or February, that means this funding model will not be changed until 2025. You can clarify on that, but this amended decision means that visitor centers get no money for another 14 months. Municipalities and private businesses are going to have to fund public services. So this is a good way of visitors to the region funding it, and as I said, I fully support the affordable housing, but delaying it means that visitor centers aren't going to be considered until next year. So just want to put that to the amendment.
We've passed the resolution on the MRDT funding. Funding, as I understand it, to visitor centers is part of the agreement that we have with Tourism Cowichan. Or maybe I'm mixing it up, but it's separate. Well, MRDT is involved. We were talking about, I heard Director Douglas say there was a surplus there and that it was the surplus that was the consideration for additional spending for visitor centers. So how are they linked?
Tourism Cowichan receives funding from the CVRD, and there's an agreement with the CVRD for $120,000 for services. And then Tourism Cowichan also receives money that flows through the CVRD through the municipal and regional district tax. For this municipal and regional district tax, they have a 5-year plan. And in this most recent plan, which was adopted in the last year, they've initiated funding in the tune of $50,000 towards visitor centers. And that's shared between the 4 regional visitor centers, including Ladysmith. So from following this meeting, we will be, based on the past resolution, we'll be going to Tourism Cowichan and saying, we need to look at the budget based on removing online accommodation platform revenue from your current budget, your draft budget, and there is an opportunity at that time also to say, and the board would really like to see some additional focus on supporting visitor centers. Is there a way that we can provide that? Now, that is all an option today. If we report back in a month, that may be too late for future discussion. So I recommend if that's the direction of the board to have those conversations with Tourism Cowichan, then it should occur and be directed to staff today.
Then I will withdraw my motion. I will withdraw my motion. Thank you for the clarification.
Do we need the seconder to concur with the withdrawal of the motion, the referral motion? Okay, so recommendation is that we have a referral motion recommended it be defeated. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's defeated. Back to amending the resolution. It was including all of the visitor centers. Are we clear on the resolution? Director Stone, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, so, yeah, it just seems like this is a late hour knee-jerk reaction to try and make something happen for 2024. I have no idea of the budgets of the visitor center, how they've allocated their money. If staff feel that they can do that work and present it to the board so that we all have clarity on how they're expending the funds that they have, I'd be prepared to have that conversation and if it can move forward in time. But I'd like to ask staff if they think if they can collect all that work from all the regional visitor center, be able to present that financial analysis to the board that demonstrates the need for that additional funding. Of course, North Cowichan had that discussion last night. We haven't been privy to that discussion or done the financial analysis as to how any of the regional visitor center are spending their funds. So I think that's a bigger conversation when historically the visitor center in the north has only been funded by Ladysmith municipal revenues and provincial revenues. There's no Tourism Cowichan funding involved that I'm aware of. But we dedicate all of our business license revenues to that. So if there's not a similar funding agreement with North Cowichan, the point being, we don't know. So it takes some analysis and it needs to come back to the whole board for that discussion. I don't think it can be completed in time, but that's up to staff.
Thank you for that, Director Stone. I'm going to Director Staples next, and then I have a comment. Director Staples.
Sorry, I didn't realize I hadn't withdrawn my hand. I am along the same lines as thinking as Director Stone just shared, which was why the referral came in the first place. But again, if staff feels that that's something that they can accomplish now, then that is fantastic, and I will support that.
Go ahead,
To
Mr. O'Reilly.
clarify, I think what could be accomplished is to request that Tourism Cowichan incorporate a number, request that they look at incorporating a number higher than 50,000. I don't think it could be accomplished to do a fulsome analysis of each of the visitor centers within the next few weeks and report back. So I think what the request could be made to Tourism Cowichan, and but I'm not sure of the outcome of that request and what that number would shift to and what the logic and rationale behind it would be.
And I'm sorry to do this, Mr. Chair, but I'd like a follow-up.
Follow-up?
So the direction should be on equitable funding to the regional visitor centers, right? So that would take analysis of both provincial, MRDT, Tourism Cowichan, and municipal and regional district funding and how that's allocated to the visitor center on some kind of formulas. But what my point being is, to me, that sounds like a bigger body of work. I'm supportive of it, but I just don't think, and I've just heard from Mr. O'Riordan that it couldn't be accomplished in this time frame.
So, thank you for your comment, and I'm going to wade in here in that it's interesting. I'm pulling the old guy card again. It's interesting how when we look at the funding, and it sort of ebbs and flows, and visitor centers are important parts of our economy and the work that they do. I completely understand that and have been supportive of visitor center operations generally. But I also have memory of investment and finance fatigue at this organization when there were major capital investments made in tourism infrastructure, visitor centers and the likes, and significant dollars from all municipal regional district partners have been made. And I think that, you know, this is a body of work. I think it's important that we do the analysis, but I'm really feeling like we're flying by the seat of our pants here at this point, and that a proper analysis of this is not something that I want to see done in less than 30 days. You've got a deadline. So, you know, the will of the committee will decide this, but we are in a position now where we can try and shoehorn something in for the 2024 budget, or do a proper analysis and give proper and due consideration based on the information that we all should be using to make such determinations. So I'm reluctant to proceed on the basis of doing this analysis for the next budget year ahead. So I'll go to Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to keep it brief. I'm very disappointed that this conversation about workforce housing has devolved into tourism centers. And I mean, let's stay focused on the fact we have an innovative motion, a resolution before us where we can start, and I think this is what we need to, thank you, it was passed. I'm just getting a little bit worked up, and then I would just like us to stay focused on this, and let's move this initiative forward. Thank you.
I'm happy with the will of the board. Yeah, and we're not talking lots of money. This could be a matter of only $10,000. It's not a big round thing. And really quick on the equity that Director Stone spoke about, the equity is there. It's already obligations for each visitor center to report all their data to Destination BC, which shows the equity on volume of visitation and the work they do. Those reports were already filed and are all immediately available by the public on Destination BC's website. There wouldn't be an extensive report. So, but I'm okay if it's the will of the board to put it to next year. I'm fine with there. I do apologize for belaboring this. It was a part of the report, and it was specifically outlined in a report for considerations on the visitor centers. I'm very happy. We already moved the motion, so this is an affordable housing discussion. But I'm happy with, if we put it to next year, so be it. I think our visitor centers will manage, and they're innovative and find a way through their funding. So thank you very much for your indulgence to the whole board. I respect your time, and I thank you.
So I think I followed the bouncing ball. We're going to vote on the amendment to include all visitor centers, and I'm going to call the question now. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. To the main motion. Were you opposed? Oh, sorry. We're in committee. It still passes. The main motion. Do you have the wording?
As amended. Thank you. The motion, and for clarity, the motion going to the board today, is that correct? All right. That staff work with Tourism Couch and Society to explore options for increasing the annual grants to the visitor centers within the region.
Seeing no other hands, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? We have 3 opposed. The motion carries. We have 4 opposed. The motion carries. Mr. Robbins, next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. R7 is a report from the Economic Development Division with regards to a letter from the city or the town of Ladysmith with regard to Ladysmith Harbor Economic Development Corporation board nomination. This is for direction.
Sorry,
Director
Mr. Chair,
Stone?
I'd like to move that we refer this to our next committee of the whole meeting.
We have a referral motion. It's been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. The motion carries. Next item.
Sorry, just for explanation, in the interest of time, and that seems to need, that would need some protracted discussion, I think.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr.
R8
Robbins.
is the report from General Manager with Corporate Services Department with regards to Function 100, a budget amendment for the purchase of a photocopier.
Moved by Director Wilson, seconded by Director McClinton. Director Wilson.
Going back to the asset management there, one of the things that was come up there, would it be cheaper to lease this thing? But considering that on year 2 it keeps working and on year 2+1 it doesn't keep working?
Ms. Mohan.
Thank you for the question, Director Wilson. In this particular case, and in the case of the previous photocopier that was just approved for land use services, we did do the analysis, the lease or buy analysis, and unfortunately, in this situation, the leasing option is not a true lease. It's sort of a vendor financing over a period of time, and the interest rates being what they are, it's actually the more expensive option. And I just will say that this photocopier that we're replacing has probably had about a 10-year life with us. So we're not actually losing photocopiers every second year. We're making them last, so.
Director Martman. Okay. Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Did we read it? I don't think we need to read it. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next item.
R9 is a report from the Environmental Services Division with regards to Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program Strategic Partners. There is a two-part recommendation to the board.
Moved by Director Stone. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Director Acton. Do we need Mr. Lawrence to come and give us an explanation? I'm looking to committee. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I'm supportive of this, but I know the stewardship groups do an enormous amount, contribute enormous amount to drinking water and watershed protection, and I would like to see us review the policy about our partnership, whatever it's called. Yeah, the partnership policy. To make sure that it's really taking advantage as much as possible of the stewardship groups, because I think that it's a very economical way of having really good work happen in the region to achieve our goals. Thank you.
Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad that Director, Alison brought this up as far as to steward the stewardship groups are concerned, because this is a fairly big one, and I'm a great believer in having boots on the ground, the local knowledge that goes a long way. And to me, there is a letter in there from the Shawnigan Basin Society to be included in this particular group as well, if at all possible. And they do a lot of work. They've got a lot of local knowledge and demonstrated commitment. So I would therefore ask if it's at all possible that the Shawnigan Basin Society be included in this particular group, if that's something that I can put forward at this place.
Mr. Lawrence, can you please enlighten us as to the process moving forward on this? Should this resolution be passed, and is it required to have a second resolution to include the Shawnigan Basin Society?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to the Director. Great question. We are, these are the two agencies that are forward in the staff report at this time, the Cowichan Watershed Society and the Partnership for Water Sustainability in BC. We are looking at considering other applications for funding under the DWWP partnership policy, so approved by the board in 2020 of November 12th, 2020. And we're looking at including the Basin Society. So at the moment, we're looking at the what the mechanism is to do that, to ensure that the DWWP partnership policy is the right mechanism to do that at this time. But certainly something that we've received that letter, that proposal, and we're looking at how best to go forward with that from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And can I have a quick
Well,
follow-up,
hang on,
please?
just let me get further clarification. So we've got Director Wilson wanting to suggest that be included, and what I just heard you say is we've got these two, and no one else has been excluded at this point. Are you looking for positive resolutions to include, even other groups like the Cowichan Lake and River Stewardship Society? Has there been any analysis done? Are you still in policy and contemplating others?
Again, through the chair to the director, we have received that application for funding from the Shawnigan Basin Society, and there is an opportunity, therefore, no one has been excluded at this point. There is an opportunity to go forward with that application, and we're looking forward to potentially bringing that forward at an upcoming committee meeting. So it's very much already in process that we would be looking at how we could bring that back. So in terms of an additional resolution of whether that's needed, at this stage, we're able to move that forward with the direction that we already have as staff to be able to process that. So
Thank you for that clarification, Director Wilson. Follow up?
Yes, please. And a word of explanation here is that the fact that this is we're talking regional as well here. One of the big problems that I have, or one of the big things that I look after very carefully, is Act 4197, which is very largely to a lot of people, which needs constant monitoring. The very fact that that monitoring is being carried out at the moment on a quarterly basis sometimes is not as often as I would like. That's the kind of thing that I would hope that the Shawnigan Basin Society in our local south area could be carrying out. So that's the reason I'm asking, not just because they're Shawnigan, but because of the whole area down in the south there. Thank you.
Director Nicholson.
I also think that the $77,000 to the Cowichan Watershed Board Society is insufficient. They have received $50,000 a year for us for over 10 years. They do amazing work. And when you think that that doesn't even cover us, one staff person, they actually run on a shoestring and do amazing work, far more impactful than many of the things that we do with respect to water and watersheds elsewhere. So I really think this, I think the policy itself needs to be looked at in the context of all the stewardship groups, and I'm not saying Cowichan Watershed Board's a stewardship group, they are not, they're something different, and how we can more allocate the funding that we have in this drinking water watershed protection program to achieve our goals maximally, which is what I'm about. And yeah, but I'm willing to just let it go for now. But I think that we need to be open to looking at that policy and thinking about this program more seriously, because it's super important. And yeah.
Thank you. And before I go to Director Stone, I'm just looking at the report, and I believe this policy is a 2020, was developed in 2020, and it sounds like staff are contemplating some revision within that. Mr. Robbins, would, if we were to pass the resolution that's before us, would it require an additional resolution, or look to staff to achieve what Director Nicholson is after? Mr. Robbins, Ms. Miles Wilson, who wants to take it? Why don't you interject then, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just in response to Director Nicholson's points is that we are going to get to the end of the strategic planning process, and we are looking at the end of the month here. So you can do that here, or it can be added in as an action as well in the strategic plan. So you have a couple of different options. I just wanted to throw that on the table, that we're talking about the end of the month here to kind of bring the final version of the document forwards. And the Drinking Water Watershed Protection Program is a program area within the strategic plan, and you can add an action at that time if you'd like to, just as a additional option.
Will that meet your needs? Director Stone.
I have nothing to say other than hopefully we can call the question.
Call the question on the resolution as presented in the staff report. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Robbins, next item.
R10 is a report from Land Use Services Department with regards to fireworks, Town of Ladysmith Festival of Lights. A recommendation for the board's consideration today, later today.
I see Mr. Morano there.
Mr. Chair, you have a
report here before you in response to a fireworks discharge permit application for fireworks planned for the Festival of Lights celebration at Town Ladysmith on November 30th, 2023, between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Staff is looking for direction.
Director Stone,
I was going to move it.
we have a seconder. Any discussion on the item? Oh, Director McClinton.
Through the chair to the mayor of Ladysmith, will there be room on the float for Area G director? Just kidding. Fully support the motion.
I'd really like to rule him out of order, but Director Stone, go ahead. Any further discussion on the item? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Mr. Robbins, next item.
We're moving on through item 11, question period. The question period is an opportunity to offer the public to ask a question regarding the business of the CVRD. The question period allows for an allotment of 15 minutes and is comprised of two parts. The first is reserved for questions directly related to agenda items. If there is time remaining, questions may be on a matter of public interest related to and in the CVRD jurisdiction. Each questioner is permitted to ask one question plus one follow-up question related to the answer. The question must truly be a question and not a statement of opinion or speech. Questioners must avoid personal references, insinuations, violent, offensive, or disrespectful remarks about another person, and unparliamentary language. Invite anybody in the gallery to participate in question period.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Cliff Evans from the Shawnigan Basin Society. We just don't have look after Shawnigan anymore. This is almost regional for ABC. The watershed goes through all sorts of different areas, so it affects more than just Shawnigan. It affects Area C, D, E, and A. So I was glad to see your decision today, and I just wonder, is that going to this afternoon's board?
Mr. Robbins? It is, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Glad I could answer your question. Does anyone else like to pose a question to the chair?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. This isn't an agenda item, but it is of interest to the people of the Cowichan Valley. Last night, Czech TV did an item on the challenges facing adults with developmental disabilities in the Cowichan Valley. And as part of their reporting, they said both men should be living at a BC housing project located at 260 White Road in Duncan, where they would have their own unit. These gentlemen are currently living on the street. But construction has stopped 6 months ago, leaving them both in limbo. This is a BC housing project, and I believe BC Housing gets funding from the CVRD. So would you have an idea why this housing project was stopped? Is there an update on that?
So I'm not going to venture into that one, other than I know that there may be participation from the Cowichan Housing Association, but I can't answer the question around that because I think there's too many levels of in between us and them, but I would be more than willing to make inquiries and get an answer. Your question was, why is construction stopped?
That's correct.
I will endeavor to get you an answer and provide it at the next Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other individuals like to pose a question to the chair on items on the agenda, hopefully?
Rob Dawes from Duncan. So this probably pertains to something. I came back to the Valley in '05. Came back to the Valley in '05, and housing needs assessments and housing's been talked about. So when UBO went down, a lot of forced industry jobs were lost. I left the island for 25 years, industrial electrician, because the economy tanked in '83 after Elk Falls. So I've come back, and my query is, because we talked a lot about other stuff, but basically housing was the undercurrent of most of the discussion today. that there wasn't more of an attempt for the derelict property across the street to be incorporated into Duncan Manor, and I've heard a few numbers, which I don't need to get into because maybe it's rumor, but we could have probably expanded that by another third. So Duncan Manor, this new one is going to replace what exists, not add much to it. The core need in the valley for housing is singles on minimum wage and seniors on fixed income. Canada has the worst pension system in the OECD, 38 countries. And that's created a lot of the issues that we're having in the valley of people that have gone into long-term unemployment or changes in employment opportunities. So it's puzzling to me that property across the way with the boarded up house and the trailer, somehow we couldn't have expanded, figured that out, done a lease, worked out with the owners, and expanded that project to add housing for people that right now throughout all the island, but through the Cowichan Valley, are living in campers, living in trailers, living in tents. And these are people that I grew up with that used to have jobs and high school or less educated. And I had the ability with the trade, industrial electrician and citizenship in the States. I worked in the States, I worked in the Caribbean, came back in 2005 to a very, very changed place in this valley.
So Rob, can I just ask you to sort of
So the narrow is,
down into what the question is?
Which was, why didn't that piece of property that's privately held right across the street somehow get incorporated into the expansion of Duncan Manor? So when St. John's tried to deal with it, they approached the CVRD. There was a little bit of talk about swapping some property. And basically it's been lessened to their footprint, which was the parking lot, which they're giving a lease. So the church was wanting to contribute to the ills of housing within the society. And we as a government on all levels in the valley couldn't seem to manage what seems practical to most of us, why that piece of property to the south side of that of St. John's parking lot was negotiated, leased somehow, and got incorporated into an expanded vision for Duncan Manor.
So let me make this commitment, and I have to be very careful in that when there's any discussions, and I'm not saying we've had them or didn't, around land and purchase and contracts and the likes, we're not the general contractor. We're not in a position where I can answer that right now. And given the fact that there's sensitive negotiations around that, what I will endeavor to do is make inquiries with my colleague from the City of Duncan and staff to determine if there's a component of that can be answered in an open format session, and we'll endeavor to do that, or at least the person sitting in this chair in 2 weeks' time will endeavor, 2 weeks' time? 2 weeks' time. We'll endeavor to provide an answer to your question.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Do we have any time left in our question period? We do. Is anyone else wanting to pose a question to the chair that hopefully, give me one I can answer. Come on, really. Looks like no takers. So with that, Mr. Robbins.
A motion to close the meeting to the public in accordance with the community charter for 4 agenda items under section 91K, negotiations, 91E, acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land, and 91G of the community charter, litigation or potential litigation.
Moved. Seconded. All in favor? Any opposed?